best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. I was looking up some data about comic shops because people had asked me, are comic shops closing? What's going on in the industry? And then a couple news articles dropped this week of people kind of saying with a kind of a nothing to see here message around 2022. There's what's kind of peculiar about all this is that you have comic companies, distributors, people who are in the business, and their job is kind of dependent on good news. So I see people like attacking Lunar or Diamond for trying to put a positive spin on their business. But I mean, come on, that is not fair. Any company is going to put a positive spin on the business. If they're not, they're stupid. So, Lunar, for example, released some numbers at Comics Pro, or at a breakfast, at Emerald City Comic Con, where they said 177 new stores opened and active. Most are brick and mortar stores, or a big chunk of them were. And, a handful of shops closed. But, a handful indicates, far less than opened. So you're putting a positive spin on things. Diamond said something similar, saying that generally their accounts were up and everything else. So again, I don't blame those companies for putting a positive spin on things. It's fine. That is kind of their job. You want positive news for whatever company you work for. If you work for Arby's, you want to keep calling your stuff food. That's important. Why be truthful? But people, the journalists, the Heidi McDonald's, Rich Johnsons, the others, part of the job of journalism is actually to go and say, all right, well, this is the PR statement from the company. This is the positive spin, but what's the other side of the picture? It's not their job to be perpetually negative by any stretch of the imagination, but it is part of their job to try and get to the real facts. So, I've been trying to get to the real facts of what's going on. And overall, I think, I'll give you some anecdotal numbers I have. So overall, how many comic shops exist in the U.S.? Well, the number that I've kind of consistently gotten around is about 2,150 or so. Now, my criteria of what a comic shop is that it sells comics. I know that sounds absolutely insane to say that, but if a comic shop has back issues and or new issues, I label it a comic shop. If it's a shop that sells Funko and games that, maybe Marvel and DC games, I don't call that a comic shop. Now, for what it's worth, if you're working through Diamond or you're looking through Lunar, I mean, we all think of Diamond as a comic book distributor, but they do distribute games and t-shirts and merchandise and all kinds of things. And there's a handful of stores for example, just in this area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that it's a chain of comic shops, and they don't sell comics. They sell a lot of comic nerd stuff, for lack of a better word, but they don't actually sell comics. It's called, I think, Fanboys is the name. A small little chain of places. They have some in some of the malls, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad they're there. It's all good, but they don't actually have comic books. They still order from Diamond because they get other material from Diamond. So I'm telling you this from the standpoint of when you see people do articles and like, well, there's 2,500 Diamond accounts. That must mean there's 2,500 comic stores. Well, no, and also you can have a Diamond account and not be in the U.S. So there's a bunch of ways that number gets tilted. But one thing that definitely has happened in 2022, and it's one reason why I'm highly skeptical of all the news that comic shop sales were through the roof, is that a number of comic shops, a pretty decent number, stopped carrying new comics for the shelves. And if you dig into a little bit of what even Lunar and Diamond have announced, the orders for new comics, the shops that are carrying things outside of pull boxes has decreased. And it's decreased somewhat across the board. There's definitely shops that are carrying comics just like they're used to. And even kind of one of these articles, Heidi McDonald mentions that during the 90s, there were somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 comic shops. Again, that's a pretty wildly inaccurate number. If you go to Capital City, you can even do a Google image search on Capital City and find that at one point, Capital City Distribution, which would be, very early 90s, was crediting 4,200 shops, 4,200 and change shops for just them. And they were one of many distributors. So that number, was high, and you can get to an exact number or pretty close to it without getting this, a range of 2,000 shops. I mean, the range of shops listed in these articles of what existed in the 90s is as big as the amount of shops that are currently in existence today. So look, I mean, the problem in all this is, as I read these articles, there's a lot of, hey, bookstores are recession proof, and maybe the bank failures are going to impact comics, and maybe this is, it's a recession, but people are always saying it's dying, but it hasn't died yet. I don't know. It's a lot of mush talk when there's a simpler, more common sense answer. Look, if you're in brick and mortar retail, you're hurting. You've been hurting for a while. You've been hurting since before the pandemic. It's hard to be in brick and mortar retail right now. And, overhead costs and other things are tough to manage. And a lot of shops have walked away from new comics. And so they're either just carrying back issues, or they've pivoted like this fanboys chain to just, merchandise and stuff like that. And, maybe we all get comfortable and say, well, that's a comic book shop of the future. It's just going to be like that. And I'm happy with it. I'm not happy with that. Maybe you are. I don't know. But I think it's time that we stop calling those things comic shops, because they're just not. There's something else. These are pop culture shops or whatever else. And this isn't a hill any of us need to die on. But if we're trying to get to, is this, what is the health of the comic industry? I don't think it does anybody any good unless you're really susceptible to depression. It doesn't do anybody any good to say, no, everything's pretty much okay. I think I read this. A lot of people sent me this article from Heidi. It said, I feel pretty confident in saying that comic shops did not close in mass numbers in 2022. I'm also hopeful that they're likely to weather 2023's issues as well, but we'll see what's to come. Yikes. I'm sorry. That's first of all, that's ridiculous journalism. But I mean, that sounds like the kind of report my 9-year-old would do. But I mean, it's no. I also don't think comics shops closed in mass numbers in 2022. But I also know, just being in Facebook groups of the retailers, and I know a lot of these people, these journalists, are in those groups too. I would say somewhere in the range of 250 or so shops did close in 2022. I don't think you can chalk all that up to, the comics are bad. I mean, everything is bad. The money's not there. People wanting more. I mean, it's hard to compete as a brick and mortar business. It's one area where comics seems to put a chip on its shoulder where it doesn't need one, or it doesn't have to have one. Look, if you hired me and I'm a paid publicist for the comic book industry right now, let's say that's my job. I'm paid to do it, and my job is to spin everything positive. The way I would describe it is brick and mortar businesses are facing very tough times. Despite that, even with losses to the comic book market, we continue to find new ways and look for new ways to innovate. That's how I would spin it. Instead, however, Comics News spins it as nothing to see here, everything is okay, which is bizarre. It's a bizarre flex when you don't need to do it. So I don't know. The other thing, and I guess I just have to put this out there, everyone lies. and again, no, it's not even something to get too heated and emotional about. Everybody has lied in comics for a long time. It's kind of a business where people lie. You go again, creators who are listening to this, you back me up, or this is true. How many times have you talked to another creator and they tell you their page rate? Unless they're their friend, they always add an extra 10 to 15% or more to it. How many times have you been told by a publisher that something is going to happen and it didn't happen? Or that this book deal was going to get done and it didn't happen? Or that the distributor was going to get something out and they didn't? Like this business is built on being fluffy with this stuff. I think, some comic shops closed. A lot of businesses closed last year. Even without getting into why they closed, it's dumb to deny that some didn't. And again, you can go to Facebook groups and just see this stuff right from yourself. Comic book shops are facing tough times. There's not a compelling big story out there that's bringing people in right now. There's just not. Saga on the independent scene was a powerhouse seller. It's not right now. Walking Dead has been canceled. I mean, just picking on the independents, there hasn't been these blow it away things. Even the Something's Killing the Children and We Only Find Them When We're Dead, kind of these books, good comics, but they're not blowing the roof off. That's the challenge. And then the big two are not putting out anything that's compelling must-reads either. We just got through, I don't know, it feels like there are 50 events from Marvel. We just got through Dark Crisis from DC. It sold soft. Dark Web sold soft. So, yeah, when you have soft-selling comics and events, it's not good for business. This isn't rocket science. Anyway, I don't know anymore. It's weird to see this back and forth. I'm not sure who's winning anymore. Like, I'd love to sit down for drinks with some of the people who do the news sites. Like, Perch hosts a roundtable with, Heidi and Rich and Chris Arant and these people. And basically it's like, hey, it's just us friends. I'm not going to do a video on this, but we're all drinking. What's the win scenario here now? What are we hoping for? Because it's unclear to me. It's like we're putting these positive pieces out, but for what end? Anyway, thanks for listening.